So, I'm here in Miami. Wow, can I be heard? I'm not hearing any sound.
I can
hope.
hear you.
Okay, great. So this is going to be a surprise for everybody because we've got it set up so that Charles is right here with me. Hello, Charles.
Hello there, Jason. Well, it's no surprise. I'm back in the hotel room in Miami.
Right, exactly. Well, there's no shortage of jackasses here on the street.
Turn left on 6th Street.
We got the cops right here, Charles.
Is that right?
Yeah, let's see if we can see them. Miami Beach PD right there and here.
What do they do? What are they doing?
I guess they're just driving around patrolling the beach. I've just arrived. I want to make sure that our broadcast is going out live. It was quite an ordeal with the traffic. I am surprised because, almost everywhere that I've been, there's been virtually no traffic. And now, here in Florida, because everybody is so keen on the openness of the state, which remains to be determined as far as if it is or isn't open. I had dinner at a restaurant in Jacksonville last night, and contrary to what I expected, you had to wear a mask, and it wasn't exactly what we have been being told. How are things in New York, Charles?
Well, they opened up restaurant dining on Friday or Saturday, I guess. So it's slightly better, 25% of capacity. But the restaurant owners are saying that that's nowhere near good enough, as you would expect.
Yeah.
And businesses continue to flee, in particular for Florida. People who operated consulting and financial advisory businesses in New York City can just as easily and readily do it in a place like Florida and have much more fun.
Right. Yeah, and it is, I think, a little bit more open than New York. Restaurant dining obviously was open. Although I had lunch at your favorite supermarket, Amazon.com. Whole Foods. And they did make me wear a mask to go in there. So, it's not this pre-COVID paradise that people might imagine, but it is beautiful here. Nice contrast to the snow in New York and the rain I was enduring in South Carolina yesterday. Charles, something very odd was brought to my attention. Apparently, George Webb was at the port of Charleston one day before me.
Wow.
That's a remarkable coincidence, wouldn't you say?
I wonder where he is right now.
Yeah. But of course, the big news, Charles, is the acquittal of Donald Trump.
Yeah, and actually, let's spend a few minutes to talk about that.
Sure.
The senators and the Democratic senators and Congresspeople and some of the Republican in name only turncoats who voted to impeach and then to convict Donald Trump have forgotten, and I'm not a lawyer, and I think the audience understands that. You know that well. But a basic principle in American jurisprudence is that you are innocent until proven guilty. It is not the job of the defendant to exonerate him or herself.
Right.
It is the job of, if it's a criminal case, the government to present evidence and to prove their case to whatever standard is applicable in that case, by a preponderance of evidence or beyond a reasonable doubt, depending on what the matters involve. So having been acquitted, Donald Trump remains as innocent as he was before this second fiasco started. That did not stop Dumb Joe, President Asterisk Dumb Joe,
Yes.
from issuing a statement saying that the substantive elements of the case are well known and arguably true. I don't know what this guy does in between eating mashed potatoes and crushed beans or whatever and drinking from a milk baby bottle. This guy should, the last thing the President of the United States should do in the midst of this contentious matter, once the Senate has reached its decision, the last thing he should do is to say, actually, everybody understands that Trump actually did incite an insurrection. And then furthermore, cry and Chuck Schumer and plastic face and plastic apparatus Nancy Pelosi are out there saying that the people the Republicans who voted to acquit in the Senate are traitors.
Wow.
This is just, and this is a team that now expects unity.
Welcome to
So
Miami, Charles.
boy, oh boy, is that person wearing clothes?
How you guys doing? She's going to the beach, I guess.
All right. Yeah.
But sorry for that distraction. I mean, it is crazy that Nancy Pelosi would say that. They've totally done away with due process. They've totally done away with, fair and free elections. It is outrageous. It's incredibly upsetting.
And not the least of which, I mean, this Bill Cassidy, the senator from Louisiana, the so-called Republican, has I think on a talk shows or the BARF shows, I should say, this morning, was saying to George Stephanopoulos that there needs to be a 9/11 style commission to get to the bottom of what happened on January 6th and beforehand, when supposedly, quote, Trump incited this insurrection and riot to try to bring down or to overturn the effects of the election. The only people I know who've been doing that steadfastly in this country are Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Valerie Jarrett, and the crew that refused to accept the results of the 2016 election.
Yeah.
If anyone needs to be impeached, if anybody needs to be brought before a court of justice, it's that group.
I agree completely, Charles. And I think that I mentioned this yesterday. I think that the president's lawyers, particularly Mark, is it Vanderveer?
Something like that, yeah.
I think they did a fantastic job. And you had informed me about a Mark Vanderveer appearance on CBS News that I got an opportunity to see, and he made mincemeat out of that reporter. I don't know exactly who that was that Vanderveer was speaking with, but she gave him a question trying to minimize the severity of the manipulation of evidence, where a tweet had an added blue check mark, which everybody who used Twitter knows that means it's a verified account that lends some additional credibility to the person posting information from that account. They also had a tweet from 2020 that was improperly dated 2021. And the reporter tried to say, oh, well, these are minor things compared to the crime, right? And Vanderveer had a great response that you can't change any evidence at all. And that's a huge deal. It's not just a lack of due process. It's a railroad job.
Right. I mean, and it's really to distract and to gaslight from what happened in 2015 and 16. We still don't know when the plot to get Trumpy started exactly. Originally, the theory was it was sometime in July 2015 or 2016. Then we learn more that the antecedents of the effort to discredit Trump and indeed to discredit Republicans likely began well before then, possibly as soon as the period where Hillary Clinton was trying to decide, did she really want to go forward with the quest to become president again in 2015? Remember, she made that announcement in April, around April 13th, 2015, roughly. So knowing the Clintons and knowing the history as well as this audience does and you and I do, I believe that this is part of a long-standing plot to subvert the Constitution and to move the United States from being a nation under its own destiny and control into a cog in a globalist structure dominated by China and possibly influenced by other go-along nations. It's been a long-standing plot. I suspect that it goes way back to maybe well before 1992.
Absolutely. And it's it's really ironic that I'm listening to this book on tape, or Audible, however you want to call it, The Devil's Chessboard, as I'm doing this driving around the country. It's just totally serendipitous how elements of the book are coming up. Like when I was in Washington, D.C., and it began speaking about Watergate, I was driving right by the Watergate Hotel. And now they were talking about the JFK assassination and various people who were, gangsters and CIA operatives who are doing stuff in Miami as I'm here in Miami. So I really recommend that book to people.
What the fuck are you videotaping, dude? Pull the fuck out.
See, so we got assholes wherever we go, Charles.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, this guy is, if his true goal is to be ignored, he could just walk by and he's barely on camera. He doesn't even know what direction it's coming in. But of course, the notion that I could be here in a tourist city of Miami, video recording for whatever purpose I might have, is none of his goddamn business. And I am sick of all these people trying to tell everybody what to do, whether it's got to do with masks or where I'm running a video recording. I'm sick of it. And you know, I got to tell you something else, Charles. As I've been driving around the nation, this ridiculous notion that's been put forth by absolute idiots, including Andrew Cuomo, that, oh, you know, put on a mask to help everybody else. 99% of the people that you see here will not even slow down 1 mile an hour to allow you to get 5 feet to the right so you can get off a highway. The notion that they care about other people's health and safety is absurd.
Yeah. Well, I think it's that whole thing, I believe, has been an effort to get us used to being controlled by supposed experts, the Garden Gnome and others associated with the World Health Organization. Suddenly, these unelected bureaucrats, many of whom do not have actual patient, doctor, medical experience, are suddenly responsible for prescribing medical vulnerabilities and medical treatments for the entire planet. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a world gone mad.
It absolutely is. And, you know, the other thing that's interesting to note, Charles, is that there's been a lot of activity in some of the lawsuits. It's very curious to me that George was at the port of Charleston yesterday, and it's also very interesting how someone who I knew and interacted with for such a short period of time has been such a persistent problem for 4 years. Normally, you know, you do business with somebody, you're friends with somebody, you get on a job with them in a movie or something like that. There's actually a lot of people in my life like that who I know for 2-3 months at a time. And, you know, for the most part, you lose touch with those people and they just go away. This guy's like a goddamn rash that you just can't get rid of, and he keeps coming back. It seems like a remarkable coincidence that he would be there in South Carolina one day before me, and so few people knew. I don't even recall if I told you that I was going there, so I don't know how that could have possibly happened, but it is very strange.
It is indeed. Well, Jason, maybe you could tell the audience where you are exactly in Miami, or you know, the area, because I don't know Miami well.
I don't either, to tell you the truth. But I'm at South Beach. The one spot that I have been to in Miami is like over there by where they have the News Cafe and the Delano Hotel and all that. So I just put that into the GPS and came down here. There was, you know, some people who I know, including Laura Loomer, who live down here, have told me that the traffic is kind of increasing because a lot of people are moving here. And also there was an accident on the highway on my way over. So that ate up about 30 minutes worth of time. And I didn't really get a chance to case too much out, but I'm walking right towards the beach right now. And you can see that in contrast to New York, almost nobody, oh well, I spoke too soon. Very few people are wearing the masks, and I'm pleased to see that.
Those are probably New Yorkers.
I don't know. The ones with the masks on,
Transplanted
right?
New Yorkers.
Yeah, that might well be. That might well be. So here, this is Ocean Drive. This is like a major, you know, thoroughfare here at Miami Beach. And it's a beautiful day. I would say it's probably hotter than 80 degrees. And doesn't look like there's too much of a pandemic going on here. That's good. Everybody's out enjoying the afternoon.
Well, because everyone understands COVID-19, you know, they're not going to make trouble. It likes to hang out in Florida, so they don't want to make trouble, get people ill, and they'd be banished from Florida. I mean,
well, what's going on?
It is remarkable.
Have you heard any more from President Dumb Joe about his plan to close Florida as if it were Wally World? One of the reasons I wanted to get down here as quickly as I have was that I was concerned that they were going to say you're not even allowed to go here anymore.
Yeah, there's all sorts of conflicting information coming out from the White House and from other places. The CDC today, or in the last little while, said they are not going to require people to have a negative COVID-19 test to do domestic air travel in the U.S.
Okay.
That's what they said. Who knows? They'll probably reverse that tomorrow.
Right.
But yeah.
Well, and they seem to flip-flop all the time, and you never know what they might come up with.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people out. That's a good
I don't
thing.
know if you're. Yeah. So I don't know if you're stuck in one place there, or if the picture's frozen, or.
Oh, is that what's happening? I hope that I'm not stuck in one.
I just see.
Let's see what we can do.
It's just showing an orange.
Oh, how about now? That might have fixed it.
An orange canopy.
That should have fixed it, I think.
Still does.
No, huh?
Not really. At least
here,
from what I see.
We're using some new stuff here, Charles, to make this work. Let me see if I can change it up for you. I have an idea how we might be able to make something else happen. Uh-oh. And you know what? I just realized it's super hot on this side of the street. And I've been operating this equipment in the cold for so long, I forgot how quickly it can overheat. So let me get into the shade here.
That may be the problem.
Yeah, that may well be the problem. And I forgot my summertime. I have a little heat sink that I put on the phone. Oh man, I better stay over here for a minute so that it's a nice breeze coming down this alleyway. So, there we go. Sorry. Is the picture coming back for you?
There is a picture, but it's just frozen, of whenever you were in front of a picket fence and an orange canopy over people dining.
Okay, well, hopefully it seems to be still going out live, so hopefully that will restore for you pretty soon. I think it might be a good opportunity at this moment, while I allow everything to just cool down a second, to talk to everybody about the poster that we've selected for today, Charles, because, a lot of people, well, let me rephrase that. Not a lot of people. There's been a limited number of people who are kind of upset that you and I have taken issue with America's second smartest crackhead, Mike Lindell. And I know the big story is the acquittal of Donald Trump. We're going to talk about that some more. But would you like to explain? We're not picking on Mike Lindell. I called the guy to try to help him because even now, I think it's extremely important that the precarious nature of the situation that President Trump is in, we don't want people injecting crazy information into the whole story here, right?
Right. I think to take a step back, how I got involved looking at fraud was believing the GE story based on close work with them prior to 2007, well prior to 2007, when I saw GE in its prime was a very, very well-run company, it seemed, strong financial statements, they hung together, they seemed to be very careful in the work that they did. And so I think, who knows when the story changed exactly, but at some point along the way, the GE management lost its mind. And you see the weakened shape in which GE is even today. The shares trading at 11, down from roughly 40 in July of 2007. And in July of 2007, the Dow Jones, the S&P, et cetera, were way under current levels. So GE's performance is a disaster. So that was a case where people like me and others would willingly suspend their disbelief. They would, if the story sounded too good to be true, they'd say, well, rating agencies are looking at it, the SEC is looking at it, stock exchanges are looking at it, governments around the world are looking at it, and it's pretty big. So everything must be right.
Right.
So stories that sound too good to be true, as we said in our last walk around, generally are false. And the Mike Lindell story starts out as one of those stories. Former crackhead, in theory, the drug and other addiction problems, goes from basically nearly dying to creating a very successful private company, and then dedicates a portion of his time, in theory, to worthwhile charitable pursuits. And I was inclined to believe that. I find his television commercials incredibly annoying, and I'm not really watching Fox anymore, so I don't have to listen to him that much. But he keeps on talking about his patented fill and that heavy Minnesota accent and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And this recent effort, though, when I saw, when you brought to my attention that Lindell's documentary rested heavily on the work of Mary Fanning, that really set off a whole bunch of tripwires. And so in the last week, I've been in close touch with various and sundry experts, including our friend Larry Johnson, who has one or more pieces up. heavily criticizing Lindell's use and reliance on Mary Fanning's work, with real experts tearing apart that spreadsheet that you used.
Yeah.
And nonetheless, Lindell is still out there. He tripled down. He, in addition to doing the documentary on Friday, he got on with Steve Bannon for an hour and supposedly, in theory, defended his work. So
Bannon did?
Um,
Bannon?
Mike, yeah, well, yeah, I didn't watch it. Steve Bannon had Lindell on either Thursday night or Friday night, in a special 3-hour show. 2 hours of the documentary and then a 1 hour taking it apart. Supposedly, Lindell survived that exercise. I haven't watched it.
Well, but let me just address that for a moment, Charles.
When I saw that, and then when
surviving a debate with somebody who advertises on your show, I mean, he basically pays Steve Bannon. I don't know if that's the most scrupulous critic of the work.
Right. I'm not. Yeah, exactly. And I'm not saying that did anything positive for me. But what did a lot negative for me is when I looked into his charity filings, and he's involved with 3 similar sounding charities, one of which, the Lindell Foundation, Inc., is like the Clinton Foundation, supposedly a public charity, which means it can't engage in partisan political activities and it can't engage in enormous, meaning private gain or advantage for the operators of the charity. And I started looking through the paperwork, and I see the same. It's a much smaller situation than the Clinton Foundation, but I think there are a lot of there's screaming red flags on his charitable activities.
Yeah.
So that's really unfortunate, because Lindell was out there as one of the president's strongest proponents in the final moments, and you see how the other side is acting. It's guilt by association. So if Lindell is proven to have actual major flaws in his story, then suddenly they're able to go back and say, well, look, Trump supporters, one of the most prominent was Mike Lindell. Look how he fell down. People bought into his BS, including the president. Lindell was there at the White House on numerous occasions when they had business leaders, and Trump praised him, etc. It's like anything else. People need to do their own work on this. They need to look at the stuff in the public domain. They need to evaluate both the business. I mean, are there ways to verify that this business actually is as large and profitable as he says it is?
How do we even know that he was actually a crackhead?
Exactly, and back on the comparisons, obviously MyPillow is a lot smaller than GE, but GE insulated itself from a lot of criticism, and I had a devil of a time getting the story out, because GE owned NBC at the time,
right?
And GE was one of the biggest advertisers across the media spectrum, not simply in television, but in radio and print and magazines, social media, everything. And so big advertisers at these legacy platforms, and I think even at the new ones, big advertisers exert undue leverage, particularly in moments of time where advertising revenue is shifting away from the legacy platforms to the alternative platforms.
Right.
And so there's a similar. That's why I said in the very beginning, in one of our first shows with you, I talked about the business model, in quotes, or the monkey business model for charity fraud. And when you start seeing elements of the same, the monkey business, that in the pillow company, I would guess there is not a strong independent person pushing back against how the various shareholders, the family shareholders, operate the business. I would guess there is not a really tough independent chief financial officer or accounting firm in the business. Right. Certainly with the charity, it's not an independent board at all. Indeed, his niece is simultaneously, I think, recently was executive director for his business, and also was an important director for one of the charities. And that relationship, family, was not disclosed as it should be in the 1990s. So there are a lot of issues, and if we had a real credible independent journalist like PAC, they would be looking at it. And indeed, I'd like to point out as well, this is a case where we're training our sights on the situation, not because of his political views, but because it's yet another perhaps regrettable example of charity fraud. And we're going to go right up into this grill wherever the facts show us.
Right. And also, Charles, I think it's important to mention that Mike Lindell has made it pretty clear that he has aspirations to become the governor of Minnesota. And, that might be an improvement compared to what they have now, but it also is strikingly similar to Bill Clinton's model for how to gain political influence. And the point of the matter is, I don't think we can simply, look at any person and say, oh, well, they're helping kids in Africa.
Breaking in and out.
Sorry, I might be getting further away from where I have a good signal. I'll keep trying to move around here so that we can, have a good presentation. There's a lot of things that we're doing here that may result, Charles, in the broadcast terminating. I'm always trying to do new and fancy things, and if the broadcast does end and there's any way for me to restore it, people will see a director's cut on subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. I'm going to keep moving down Ocean here, and hopefully I'll get a stronger signal. But I was saying that Mike Lindell running for governor and having all these fraudulent, potentially fraudulent, seemingly fraudulent charities, it's just strikingly similar to Bill Clinton's model. And I don't think we can just give him a pass because people like his pillow or people like the fact that he wears a cross and praises Jesus. These people need to be scrutinized. Anybody that wants to inject themselves into the public sphere, particularly if they want to become a politician and take people's money and use it for charity, that is, you're putting yourself up for scrutiny. I've been scrutinized very heavily by a lot of people. Most of them have been using false information to try to make me appear guilty of things that I haven't done. But in this case, we found someone who appears to be using false information to make him appear to be some kind of a saint when perhaps he's not. A lot of people are confused by me questioning,
Right.
if he is in fact a crackhead. Like, why potentially would somebody lie about something like that? It's unflattering. But obviously the answer is, if he wants to start a charity to help people overcome addiction, if he is seen as an addict who has done that, that gives him credibility in that field. And that would be one reason why you could do it. It's another thing that a lot of the people who are criticizing you and I for scrutinizing the guy cite as something we should leave him alone because that's something great that he did.
Well, actually, I did some further research on this whole issue of whether addiction treatment centers are vehicles for grifters. And sadly, it turns out that the whole landscape of these addiction treatment centers, there are many that are unscrupulous, and it's yet another example of potential grifters and con artists and fraudsters taking advantage of the most vulnerable of the vulnerable. I mean, you're dealing here when you're talking about people who are trying to break an addiction, particularly a crack or cocaine addiction or drug addiction. You're talking about oftentimes very smart, but people with other issues who are loved by family members, often are surrounded by people who are willing to pay for the treatment, pay any price for the treatment.
Right.
And if ever there were to be an area that really should be regulated for abuse and overseen for abuse, I would argue it's homeless people, it's orphans, it's the school education of children and universities, and treatment of the elderly. These are all areas where if we had an honest, responsible government that wasn't corrupt as hell, you could actually imagine Republicans and Democrats and independents coming together and saying the most vulnerable among us are the people that government should try to protect assiduously. And instead, we have these virtue signalers, and I think Lindell is definitely a virtue signaler. And the Clintons are certainly virtue signalers.
Yeah.
And the Bushes and the Obamas and others. And look at my charity, my this, my...
So you got nothing but assholes.
Those presidential charities are taking care of our property of we the people. And
absolutely.
You shouldn't be getting any brownie points for just...
Charles, we got a party going on over here.
Right.
Sorry about all the noise. I agree with you, but I guess people are having some drinks here on Sunday, and the guy from Texas A&M thought it would be funny to just block the camera. But I mean, everybody's having a big party here in Miami Beach. It's really cool. One other thing I wanted to say, I hope you can hear me. Yeah, sorry, let me move away from this. It's nice to see people having a... Sorry, maybe you can hear me a little better now. It's nice to see people having a nice time. But one of the things... One other thing I wanted to add is that, instead of overseeing these people, it seems like President Dumb Joe perhaps is going to make Andrew Cuomo in charge of killing old people.
You're cutting out, Jay.
Sorry, Charles. Let me go out to the street here. Maybe we'll get better signal as I move back towards the city. But we got to see a little bit of what's going on Ocean Drive, I believe is the name of that street. Can you hear me any better? Charles?
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so I'm trying to get somewhere where hopefully we'll have a little bit better signal and be in the shade here. Yeah, I'm noticing that the image seems frozen. Let me see if I can do anything to restore that. I think the phone is getting hot.
Yeah, I mean, this Cuomo scandal is coming out.
Should be better now.
Okay.
Can you see me? Charles, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
There we go. Cuomo scandal. Please enlighten us.
I can hear you. Yeah.
About the Cuomo scandal.
Right. So during the election and in the early period of the pandemic, a lot of people, Janice Dean, the weather person at Fox, who lost two, I don't know if they were in-laws or relatives, who were in nursing homes in New York. Andrew Cuomo, the governor and genius and dictator in New York State,
Emmy Award winning.
decided, an Emmy Award winner, exactly, on the strength of his abysmal performance with his sister running a homeless charity into the ground. He decided that he was a medical expert and resisted all inquiry into the suspicious and high number of elder deaths, ostensibly from COVID in New York State. And an aide recently came out and admitted that the reason they were slow-walking release of any of this information prior to the election is they feared that a Trump-led Justice Department might do something about it.
Exactly.
And to the credit, frankly, there's probably another game afoot, but to the credit of the Democrats in New York State, in particular Letitia James, the Attorney General, both she and de Blasio and other Democrats are saying, "Now, wait a minute. It is outrageous. These allegations, if true, are outrageous. They're criminal. Got to do something about it." So I think Andrew Cuomo and his brother Chris, Fredo, are actually in serious trouble here for the first time in New York State, which will be interesting to watch.
I hope that's true, Charles. You know, that we didn't give you the information because you thought you might do something. Remarkably similar to, I lied because I thought the truth would upset you.
Right. Yeah, and we've talked before about the four-box approach to life: high intelligence, low intelligence, high arrogance, low arrogance. The high arrogance, low intelligence box is a box in which Andrew Cuomo has spent his entire life.
Yeah,
and his brother alongside him.
I agree, Charles.
So it's good. It may be good that Democrats in New York are waking up to it. Alternatively, given how badly things are going in the state and city, it is possible that this is a move even farther to the left. New York State and New York City, if you can imagine that.
Well, what do you mean? Why would that be?
So,
why would that move further to the left?
Well, the people who are being mooted, the people who are being discussed as candidates for mayor in this election in November and then governor later are people who have pedigrees. I mean, Tish James is part of the left, I think, she's really making a lot of headlines. I mean, in addition to the Cuomo thing, the National Rifle Association, which is a corrupt charity in my view, filed for bankruptcy. And she's going so far as to say, Tish James, in New York criminal court, I think, that it was a fraudulent bankruptcy and attempt, that they're hiding assets and overstating liabilities, and they're trying to vacate the process.
Whoa.
So, there's a lot of damage up here in New York. It's getting worse. We talked in the very beginning of this whole road trip around on the pandemic that the real damage here is, I think, psychological to young people, very young kids, people in school, people trying to get through high school and college and graduate school, and then start their careers. This is an incredibly destructive process, locking everything down, and turning us all into potential wards of the state. And then when I see these rescue plans, we're talking about now almost a year into it, we've had 2 small payments, and they're now talking about a 3rd small payment. And meanwhile, the public servants, most of them, are on full pay. They're getting their benefits increase, accrue every year. And no one's really asking the kinds of tough questions of, if you and I could do this kind of a broadcast on a shoestring with technology as it advances, why is it the government needs to be more people, more spending, more buildings, more projects, more programs with no accountability every year? Why is that the case? Why are we on a diet while the public sector is in the modern equivalent of that movie Le Grand Bouffe, about a bunch of people get together and eat themselves to death?
Now, Charles, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Monday President's Day? Tomorrow is President's Day.
I think you're right. I think it is President's Day.
So the thing I want to point out to people is that, while you were explaining that stuff to us, I passed by the News Cafe. I don't know Miami that well, but the last time I was here, that place was absolutely teeming with people, and now it's totally out of business. I don't know if that has anything to do with the pandemic or not, but certainly all of these like smaller hotels here, 1 block in from the beach, I would think ordinarily would be quite full with people coming in and out of them, going to the beach, even hanging out on the patios here, having cocktails and stuff, and they appear quite empty. People watching who know Miami well can compare this level of activity to normal level of activity and tell me if this looks kind of okay or a lot less. Look at this vehicle, Charles.
It's funny, I can't see anything.
Oh, wow, I'm sorry. Well, okay, I think the audience can, and we can see you. So as long as we still have you, there are some places for lease here. There are, as I said, the News Cafe, which was previously a real hot spot, is closed, and I would expect people would be there having lunch. Jet skis and car rentals here on Collins Avenue, certainly not busy out the door. So I think every city, even though Florida has famously been, declared as open and less under lockdown, it's still being pretty hard hit. I mean, we see a lot of these hotels closed and for rent. Stardust Hotel, for rent. So if you want to open a hotel in Miami, Charles, now's your chance.
Yeah, count me out.
That's not a good investment, huh?
Another thing, niet, as they say in Russia. But I think one thing that is interesting to point out, I'm jumping around a little bit here, but every week, for the last several months, I've been looking more carefully into market trends. And what I have noticed is that the yield on 10-year U.S. Treasuries has gone from a low of around 40 basis points last year to jumping up to 1.2%, 120 basis points.
Wow,
that is a very large move.
And what does that mean for people like me who don't know anything about it?
U.S. 10-year Treasury rates are the base rate that people, sophisticated investors, look at when they're trying to evaluate, do I want to buy something riskier than U.S. government debt? And so when you see a move in this, it's a very deep market for 10-year U.S. Treasuries. I mean, it's one of the biggest securities markets in the world, very actively traded. An American owner is going to say that there's very little risk. Our expenses are in dollars typically. So if the U.S. government or federal government were to go bankrupt, the world would have a lot more serious problems. But when you see a move of that magnitude, now it had been suppressed down to the 40 basis point level. That was a very, very low level. You see these recent moves up, and you don't yet see a market crack. When the base rate rises, that should put pressure on equity prices.
What do you mean a market
all
crack?
Equities are more risky.
We're not up to Hunter Biden. Not up to Hunter Biden yet.
That's right. Yeah, the $2 million book deal, right? For a crackhead. But I think these recent moves, coupled with the the various blunders. We're now in a zone where it's crystal clear that the Democrats are speaking unity, and what they mean by unity is you will agree with our viewpoint, otherwise we're going to persecute you.
Right.
We're now moving into the retribution phase, just at a time when enemies and rivals around the world are challenging the United States, just at a time where we may be in a lockdown for longer than we think. Biden, who said during the campaign that we'd have 100 days of wearing masks and then we'd be back to opening up schools, has now defined opening schools apparently as if a school is open 1 day a week, it's open.
Oh my God.
And that's rubbish. I mean, imagine if you said, all right, you pay me a monthly salary, and if I show up 1 day a week, right, I'm working.
That's crazy.
I know.
Oh.
So in an environment where the debt markets are signaling that there's concern about U.S. dollar-denominated debt, which is why interest rates have risen, in that market at a time of global instability and now political recriminations, this stock market prices very close to all-time highs for indices. This is a time of immense concern and caution, and I have no confidence, less than negative confidence, if that's even a concept, that the Biden economic team knows what the hell it's doing.
Yeah. Well, I think all you need to do is look around the formerly most prosperous cities in America to see that we are in a terrible situation. And I mean, I have noticed, Charles, a real lot of license plates from different states just driving around and, parked over here. I guess that's always true in a city like Miami. But, this is sort of the general chatter that I'm hearing, is that it's getting real crowded here in Florida, and although it's nice that perhaps it's a little more open for people who live here, we can't really concentrate America down to 2 or 3 cities or 2 or 3 states and expect there to not be other consequences of that in terms of infrastructure, services, culture clashes. A lot of people are saying in Texas that everybody's coming from California and trying to Californicate Texas.
Yeah, which won't happen. But it's a moment of great fluidity. I suspect you don't see a lot of moving vans parked outside of Florida houses getting ready to head north and settle in Massachusetts and New York and New Jersey and the high tax portions of the Northeast, or maybe Chicago. I suspect all the migration is one way and southward.
Well, I can tell you, I saw a lot of U-Hauls on I-95 heading south, and a lot of Winnebagos, and a lot of people, obviously with like those Thule, whatever those things are on the top of their cars. So it does seem like a lot of people, like myself, are on road trips or contemplating relocating or actually relocating or living in RVs like people who like to sue me.
and meanwhile, the building projects up north in New York City continue.
Yeah.
And there's, as we walked around in our many walkthroughs in the far west side, there's fundamentally a whole new city.
Yep.
In the far west side of New York City in the 20s and up. And there's a vast amount of space coming online just at the time when people are leaving.
And it's interesting that a company like Facebook would take so much office space at the Farley post office when most people would look around and make a determination that it's time to leave, not time to rent more space, unless they know something that we don't know.
Yeah, people make very bad leasing decisions.
How's it going?
Facebook for them.
Sorry, hang on one second, Charles. Busy in the store? Not busy. Yeah, I happen to notice that this Red Bull racing store is just virtually empty, and the guy working here is, justifiably bored, just sort of waiting there for people to come into the store. So how has business been around Miami? Do you need a mask to go into the store? Yes. Okay, yeah. And that's dictated by the store or the city?
Jessica.
That's all right if you don't know. I don't mean to bother you. But it's a store policy or it's a city policy?
It's a city policy.
City policy, thank you. So Charles, everyone has been saying that DeSantis is a great hero, and I do think he's a much better governor than Andrew Cuomo, but there is also a possibility that what he's done is just deflected the blame from himself and allowed the municipalities to make these decisions, and the net effect is fairly similar.
Yeah, well, it's got to be. I mean, aren't the schools open in Florida?
It's a good question. I'm not sure.
I think they are. I think they may be.
Well, and I certainly don't mean to. I certainly don't mean to criticize DeSantis. He's doing better than our governor, but it's a complicated problem.
Well, that's a low bar, Jason.
Yes, true. That's very true.
He's doing better than Colonel Klink.
Right. These guys look like security for this place. Pretty little things. Hi. Are you guys police?
No. Fire.
Oh, yeah? So how's COVID going around here? You guys are wearing masks. Is the city mandate that you have to wear a mask?
No, not mandate.
Just your choice to do it? How have they, so you guys run ambulances with the fire department. Are there a lot of people getting COVID?
No, I don't know if it's a lot, but it's still around.
Yeah, I mean, there's mad parties going on the beach. If it was so deadly and dangerous, it seems like, next week there'd be a ton of people coming in.
We'll see.
Be safe, guys. Take care.
Yeah.
All right, so that's cool. At least nothing's on fire right now, Charles. That's good.
But did you get in? You were about to talk about the Miami Vice poster.
Oh, yeah,
But,
right. Right. We forgot to mention that the reason why we have selected Miami's nice, first of all, is Miami is nice. It's nicer than New York. It's not snowing and it's not freezing cold. But also, Miami Vice, they were the Vice squad on the police, and so they were busting people for cocaine, I guess. That's an old show, but I thought it would be a funny way to get America's two smartest crackheads in there. And also, we've got President Trump down in the bottom, sort of reveling in his second impeachment victory. I mean, frankly, I think it's kind of cool that they've tried and failed to impeach. I mean, it's not cool, but at least from the historic standpoint, Donald Trump was the victor both times. They're obviously trying to, destroy his legacy and everything. And it's, again, interesting to be listening to the Devil's Chessboard book juxtaposed to all the events that are happening now, because, Charles, I've become very firmly convinced that we've had 3 presidents that have openly challenged the CIA, which is essentially the tip of the spear of the deep state, and that would be John F. Kennedy, Richard Nixon, and now Donald Trump. And each of them have met less than excellent fates. Although Donald Trump's fate and his ultimate story has not yet been written, I hope that he can succeed. I do think that Trump has been the most successful of the 3 in exposing the deep state, letting the public know about it. And unfortunately, in the end there, it seems like he wasn't able to wrestle power away from them.
Well, actually, I think the Democrats are, they think they're too smart by half. In fact, they're twice as dumb, or more than twice as dumb. They've now set a precedent that you can impeach a former official.
Right.
Right? And they've also criminalized political differences.
Right.
And that was never, we go back into the history of the founding of this country and the problems in the English Republic. The founders were well aware of the dangers of political parties, which they referred to as factions. And they did not envisage, for all their wisdom, the degree to which the system would become corrupted by these partisan political interests. So now we live in a country where the party on top of the food chain has the ability, given cancel culture and the tools that technology now lends us, has the ability to crush the opposition into oblivion.
It's pretty bad.
So when we go back and we think about non-case that was made tying Donald Trump to inciting an insurrection, I mean, there was no evidence of that. Indeed, the evidence that you and I saw with our own eyes and others have examined and it's out there in the public domain and who knows, may never actually be studied the way it should, suggests that the mob was, the violent elements of the mob were likely Antifa and far-right people does not ally with in any way, shape, or form, and in fact condemns. Indeed, there is a Michigan politician gave a speech in last week, I think, up at Hillsdale College on a mic, where he claimed in an hour-long discussion that the whole January 6th thing was set up
Yeah,
by the Uniparty to get rid of Trump.
there's no doubt in my
crush it.
mind.
Yeah. And so who's going to examine that? We know they're not going to do it at ABC, CBS, and NBC. We know the Times and the Washington Compost are not going to do it.
Right.
It's going to fall to you and people like you, and perhaps me, to go back over this evidence. I mean, who actually stood to benefit from Trump's departure? Crooked people in the uniform. It's that simple. The Mitch McConnells.
Yeah.
And we look at the narrative. The data is there for us. We can look and see the state that China was in 1988. Go further back if you want, but look at 1988. Look at when Nixon. You can go as far back as 1970 with this UNCTAD data, and China was in a disastrous position. I mean, literally disastrous position. The few who are, let's say, are at the top of the food chain, you take them out with some estimate, and the bottom of the food chain is living on, like a milk carton kid, living on less than $1 a day. That was in 1970. And scroll forward to 2017, I don't know, or 18, or maybe 19, the most recent year for which we probably have data. You're going to see the numbers suggest that China's a lot better off. Who else is a lot better off? The law firms, the consulting firms, the politicians, the drug companies, anybody who wanted to get wages down, anybody who wanted to escape tough regulation on environmental and other matters and human relations matters in this country, in the West, and then ship production over to China, where they let you do whatever you want.
Gain of
There's no
function
set of
studies.
right. I mean, there's no set of regulations in the United States yet for how big and how strong nets should be to collect the people who jump out of their dormitories because they're making no money putting together Apple Watches and Apple tablets and other things in these factories in China. But that is a thing in China. I mean, it's a horrendous set of working conditions. And it's not simply a Chinese matter because by letting them into the WTO and trading with them, we're bringing the people who claim they're advocating on behalf of the workers, the progressives and the liberals, are indeed enslaving. We're in now. We've legalized digital slavery.
Yeah.
Where if you speak up and complain, you get canceled. I don't know how many people you've noticed in the last week or so have been canceled on Twitter and Facebook and elsewhere.
Yeah, tons.
It's outrageous.
It is. I know. I mean, it's become a real lefty kind of cesspool there on Twitter, and there's all these things that we're starting to see. Unfortunately, they planned it before and they executed, and now we're starting to see. So, a little bit of a reaction rather than being proactive had we known. But, I look at things like the Lawfare blog and the guys that have come out of that bot Sentinel thing. These are all the tools that they're using to, as you said, silence the opposition. And Charles, you said who stands to benefit from getting rid of Donald Trump. You look at all the people who are commenting on videos and doing things to try to prevent me from doing these broadcasts, which would include sharing information that you've been providing to everybody. Who would benefit from that? And how could somebody have time, 4 years on, to keep doing this, to keep harassing me and trying to discourage people from becoming sponsors on Patreon or Subscribestar? It's just not normal behavior. And it just makes me wonder, because we are bringing forward information that could be damaging and having guests on that are sharing the information along the lines of what you're talking about. So I'm certainly far lower down the chain than CBS or Fox News, and the people that they have trying to stop me are likewise, smaller entities, but it's very clear to me that that is their purpose. Charles, I'm standing right outside the Dade County Health Department here.
Did you get COVID?
No, I don't think so. I really don't think it's any more likely that I'll get that than I will the flu, and I just don't walk around day to day scared that I'll get the flu or pneumonia or any of the things that you can get. There's tons of viruses and pathogens that are around us all the time. There actually are quite a few businesses that are out here. I'm just sort of exploring the streets of Miami. Again, I don't really know it that well, so let me see if the people in the comments have anything to say to us. But what else did we want to cover today, Charles?
Well, I wanted to mention, and I'll get in trouble for misgendering, I think, but there's a phrase that's called, we all understand the phrase witch.
Right.
But there's another phrase that maybe people have not heard, which is called Harridan, Haridan, which is a special type of really ugly, crazy witch. And that's Chuck Schumer. I mean, the way this guy talks, have you noticed that? I mean, the people who are on the Democrat team are a bunch of angry, mean, intolerant people who have decided that only they know what is the correct way forward. There's no point in debating. The science is settled. The facts are in. Just let them do to us what they want to do to us.
Yeah.
And that is an attitude that very few people tolerate. I mean, maybe if you're into the 50 Shades of Grey stuff and you're submissive, you like that kind of stuff. But I mean, most Americans are not into that. No. And I actually think this recent episode in particular, has turned the stomachs of people who are not prone to get politically involved. And these people were going to come, I believe, in droves to the polls, not only to make sure in 2022 and 24 that they straighten things out, but to make sure that there is no more monkey business. In the good news front, and maybe it's a big ruse, Chief Justice Roberts is still in charge of the Supreme Court, sadly, but the Supreme Court has agreed apparently to hear 3 election fraud cases.
That's interesting. So what's the potential outcome of that?
Well, it could just be academic, but we saw the way this thing worked, right? During the election, when it mattered, we needed to suppress things. You heard that the allegations that Cuomo was stuffing COVID patients into nursing homes incorrectly was rubbish and fake news, and don't listen to it. And now it turns out to be very much real news. That tends to be the pattern. Again, the business model for political corruption and political interference is anytime somebody says that something is a real thing that needs to be focused on, the people threatened by it attack it as being fake news or not worthy of your consideration. And we're seeing that already snap back. People are saying, "No, wait a minute. What Cuomo got an Emmy for his successful press conferences on handling COVID. You mean he actually killed a whole bunch of elderly people by what he was doing?" Yeah. And we're going to see, I think, the same thing. I actually think the Harris people are going to encourage the lamestream and others to reconsider the Biden family now. And because it's certainly in their interest, the Harris people and her handlers, to get rid of Biden and put her in for a partial term. She deserves another 2 terms, which I don't know if she can get away with that or not.
Yeah, can you do that? I mean, if you serve, I don't think a president can serve more than 2 terms, which a partial term plus 2 would be more than 2. We got to look at that
language.
Again,
we debate that. You would debate that until the cows came home, right?
Yeah, I don't really want her to ever be president. And by the way, along the lines of what we were saying about Devil's Chessboard, that whole insertion of a jackass as the vice president to wipe out the main president, that's about the oldest trick in the book.
Exactly. I mean, and the one thing we talked a little bit about the defense, the tape that was put up on Friday, I think it was, which had Kamala Harris cackling with Ellen DeGeneres. DeGeneres asked her, who would you rather be in the elevator with, Mike Pence, Jeff Sessions, or somebody else? And Harris, was it Donald Trump?
I think so.
I don't know if it was.
Well, they played it during the impeachment. That's where I heard it.
Yeah, and she said, well, is it okay if only one of us comes out alive? Something like that. And
does
the
one
2
of us
of them
have to come out alive, right?
Right, and that to me, and whipping people into a frenzy as they did after the election of 16, Madonna, who should stick to singing, or maybe stick to retiring.
Yeah.
And these other crazy people, inside Kathy Griffin and others, And even Joe Biden saying he wanted to take President Trump out behind a school and beat him up.
Right.
So I think the reaction of all this, it's kind of like, when you were growing up, and maybe this never happened in your family, but it certainly happened in my family. We had 3 boys. I don't know how many you had. You don't have to say. But you get to a point where 3 boys are all angry at each other, and they all have grievances with one another, and the parents just don't freaking care. It's like, I don't care. You just, all of you, shut the F up.
Yeah.
And, whatever you're bickering about is less important than the fact that China is about to eat our lunch,
Right.
having paid far less, frankly, to the Biden family and others than they should have paid to try to destabilize and destroy this country just at a critical moment. You mentioned the attacks on the channel. They always seem to come just as the channel is cresting to new heights,
Yeah.
as the viewership's coming back. And what that does, particularly now that so many conservatives or people who are independent who might share this stuff on Twitter and elsewhere are now shadow banned or actually banned.
Yeah.
Your growth trajectory slows, and the other folks get away with AOC, for example, using the argument that, I have 6 million Twitter followers or whatever she has. I'm still on Twitter. Why do I care what you think? You've been banned.
Right, exactly.
And that's just childish stuff.
Yeah.
And I think the reaction of people who are responsible, who employ other people, who are managing businesses and capital and operations, and who care about education and care about healthcare and stuff, the reaction of all this is that the political class, it's pronounced crass actually, has gone completely haywire. And I really think people are past a breaking point. They're really fed up with all this. And particularly because these genius schemes of reinventing the way we're supposed to work manifestly have not worked.
Yeah.
We're all a lot worse off.
You know what I'm farming? He got perfect time.
I don't know what that's all about.
Something going on. I don't know. That guy's pretty angry on the phone, Charles. It's a wild scene going on
You might
here in
want to get
Miami.
away from that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might want to get away from that area.
Yeah, I mean, in my experience, Miami is actually more dangerous than New York in terms of crazy people that will accost you. But, I haven't been here during the pandemic, so it's hard to say. I actually haven't been to Miami in a couple of years, so it's hard to say. But I agree with what you're saying, Charles. The other thing that's interesting to note with regard to the attacks on this channel is the timing down to the day, how they correlate with when things are happening in the various lawsuits. David Hawkins really frequently speaks about how you can understand narratives by tracking the characters, and conversely, how you can understand characters by tracking the narratives.
Happy Valentine's Day!
Happy Valentine's Day. And that's another reason why it should be super jam-packed over here. Valentine's Day on Sunday, with most people having the day off tomorrow or being unemployed, you would think there'd be like loads and loads of people around. Again, I don't know what level of traffic this is compared to recent days in Miami, but Charles, as things happen in the lawsuits that are favorable towards me, in an effort to increase the pressure, and on Sunday when they know I'm getting ready for your show, and also all the weasels who have no lives other than to fixate on me and try to destroy what I'm doing, they get extra intense on Sunday and on Friday when I have Hawkins and Cullen. So it's clear to me that these are coordinated, calculated groups of people who are certainly acting with the interest. I mean, you take this Vice News special, I've mentioned it before, it's just so strange that Vice News would so prominently feature Robert David Steele and Manuel Chavez and allow those guys to share their perspectives on what was going on with the 17th letter of the alphabet. And then Vice News uses footage of me from that Port of Charleston incident. Did somebody steal this dude's Rolls Royce? I think somebody ripped off the winged lady from the Rolls Royce. But they show those guys,
Wow.
and they just use footage of me. They display my name. They tried to correlate the title of the video. The Port of Charleston video, Charles, was called Clear and Present Danger, Calm Before the Storm. And the interesting thing about George Webb's video that he made there a day before I went there, which I just found out about yesterday after I left there, is that he admits what I've already said. He came up with the title for that video, not me. So if there is anything about that title that's suggestive of foreknowledge of what would happen with the 17th letter of the alphabet, I didn't have that foreknowledge.
Yeah.
But there seems to be a
Actually,
coordination.
And you bring up Webb, and remember he was fond of saying he's a heartbeat away from Bibi Netanyahu. One thing, just switching gears a little bit to talk about, is the immense progress that was made under Trump in a short period of time. And I'll give credit to Jared Kushner, though I don't particularly like him, in changing the landscape of relationships in the Middle East, in determining, I think correctly, that endless amounts of money to the Palestinians with no accountability wasn't making any progress. The various accords that were forged, and I think Trump was close to getting one done with Saudi Arabia and probably would have gotten that done had he been reelected. All of that is now being unraveled with the President of the United States refusing to speak to Bibi Netanyahu. I guess it's 40 days in, or a large number of days in so far. He hasn't spoken to him, which Israel is a pretty important ally, at least under Trump and others, has been an important ally. And many in the United States, not simply Jewish people, but religious observers, that's very important. So the treatment of Israel, the embrace of the Palestinians, the rumor that they're now going to finally shut down Guantanamo, the attempt to get the ridiculous Iran deal back on track, and then the tough treatment of the various people, UAE, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, others that have been working so well with Israel and with the United States, again, to set the groundwork, to set the foundation for a lasting peace and opportunity across that big region. It's just shocking to me that the so-called the foreign policy expert group embraces this.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just not good.
Not good. Well, what's the latest that President Dumb Joe has done? Any more, I've been on the road, so it's been hard to keep up. Any more executive orders destroying the country?
I don't know. I mean, he was playing a video game with his granddaughter yesterday during the trial.
God. Maybe Elon Musk put a
mean,
chip in his brain, like the monkey plays video games with a chip in his brain.
Yeah. I don't think a monkey would need a chip to outplay President Dumb Joe.
Exactly. Yeah, they'd have to downgrade the software for the monkey to be as smart as Joe.
Right. And speaking of dumb lawyers, this guy Raskin, the House manager, who was, I think, was a law professor in real life, to call yourself a left-leaning person and a Democrat, maybe a progressive, and sign on to a program where you're going to accord a defendant no due process in the indictment phase, which is the impeachment phase.
Yeah.
No chance to counter the argument, no consideration of evidence in that phase. And then ramrod through the process at trial, saying you wanted witnesses, then denying witnesses, then at the last minute saying there's a new piece of information that's come forward and that's going to change everybody's mind, and then to do a gigantic belly flop, lose.
What was that new information supposed to be?
Some Democrat congressperson from the West Coast, I think from Washington State, claims that she overheard a conversation with McCarthy implicating Trump as possibly leading a, quote, insurrection, which is just, it's hearsay, it's baloney.
Ridiculous.
And it's not new, actually. It had been reported beforehand. But then after all that, to say on the Sunday shows, as the coordinated message from the Uniparty is, including Cassidy, a Republican, and others, that everybody understands that Trump did incite the violence. And even though he was acquitted, the only reason he was acquitted is that Republicans are guilty of a conspiracy. Those who voted, to acquit, are guilty of a conspiracy, and they should be eventually punished as well, either by being removed. They don't specifically say this yet, but removed from committee assignments or kicked out of their various seats in the House and the Senate. I mean,
Right.
this is the most intolerant approach. And we're not talking here about really high crimes and misdemeanors in the sense that is contained in the Constitution and in our history. We are talking about political differences.
Right.
It is now okay to criminalize political differences, or so the left believes.
Right.
Now, in the end, there will be a time again, it may be a number of years, it may be in 2022 or 2024, there will be a time when perhaps real conservatives, perhaps independent conservatives, economically literate people who cherish the Constitution will come back in power. And do these people who are so intolerant of their opponents, do they want to be on the receiving end of intolerance and cancel culture? Do they want to see, I believe, I hope, there are people in the progressive wing who would like to see the social media and tech monopolies busted up in the same way that Teddy Roosevelt did it. It's more than a century later, we now need, I think, trust busters.
You seem
We
so
need to
far
have
away from
rewrite-
that in this moment, though.
I understand, but there comes some. There's a bridge too far, and people look at this. It's not like Congress has. I don't even know that Congress has double-digit approval
Yeah.
in opinion polls. I think they could be down around 9%.
I think
You know what?
COVID-19 is more popular than Congress, Charles.
Exactly.
Well, I mean,
think
it's-
terminal can.
I don't understand how anybody can look at what's gone on and not feel anything but extremely frightened if the process can be turned so unfairly and destructively towards someone who is not only a billionaire and has access to, you would think any lawyer that he would want, but also a former president of the United States. It is quite intimidating. It's amazing that they were able to prevail to the extent that they did. I mean, what do we know, if anything? I had heard that Trump was planning a rally here in Florida, but I haven't been able to confirm that at all. Do we know what President Trump is planning to do? He said MAGA is just getting started, but what did he mean by that, Charles?
I'm making the industry nervous.
I don't know. I mean, I think he's waiting for this to play out. I mean, people do have a sense of fairness. What's fair, and the Cheryl Atkinson always talks about it. Put the shoe on the other foot. Look at the behavior. When her computer was being spied on, possibly by the FBI and others. Imagine if the Bush people had done that to Obama.
Happy Valentine's Day.
What sort of outrage? There would be actual riots in the street. I think there's a sense, though, that Joe Biden, a deep sense that Joe Biden is not the legitimate president of the United States of America.
I have that sense.
Well, I think it's more than just you and me. I think people look at the evidence and they say, "No, wait a minute." There's in the Peter Navarro 3-part report, which I haven't read, but I've skimmed through the 3 parts. A lot of evidence, a lot of footnotes, a lot of links, a lot of things for people to look at. Very clear that William Barr and the FBI did not investigate election irregularities the way they should have.
Yeah.
Very clear that the various swing states did not. They obstructed any investigations. Very clear that there's never been a serious investigation of George Soros and other charities like his and the Clinton Foundations and others, even though there's abundant evidence of vast criminal behavior that costs this country a lot of tax dollars and a lot of credibility. So it's very clear that something is rotten in the United States of America. And it's only going to get worse given the people that dumb Joe is putting up for consideration. I'd like to say a few words also about Mitch McConnell, and I'm going to get in trouble, but I think the correct way to speak about him is Bitch McConnell. I mean, this guy is a disgusting example of the swamp. I mean, he is, in theory, a lawyer. He's supposed to be clever. The man is acquitted. Donald Trump is acquitted, and Bitch McConnell gets up in the well of the Senate.
I don't know, you got assholes who are trying to run me over when the sign says walk. Sorry, he was acquitted, yes, and McConnell then went and made that speech that undermined not only the acquittal, but the entire legal process.
Right, and remember when he was minority leader, trying to oppose the majority leader, I guess, trying to oppose Obama. He was lauded as being, remember, the sequester approach, this incredibly complicated approach to try to tame the budget. The facts are that under Republicans and Democrats alike, since 2000, the last year that the United States federal budget was in balance, albeit by a small positive number, the structural budget deficit and the towering pile of debt in this country are a responsibility for those crimes, I would argue, rests squarely on the shoulders of establishment Republicans and the entire Democratic Party, and the compliant media and academia that feast at the trough of all the excesses that are created by this deficit spending and mounting debt. Then there's the assault on our rights, our freedom of expression, our freedom of movement, our right to vote by secret. All of that has been sorely challenged, grievously challenged by the deep state, and that we embraced after September 11th, 2001. We willingly surrendered our freedoms.
Oh,
this
and I meant
is
to
a
mention,
massive shift.
I meant to mention earlier when you said a 9/11 style investigation into what happened. I have no doubt that that's what we'll get, meaning a totally sham investigation that fails to actually get to the bottom of what happened and holds absolutely crazy people coming at me, Charles, holds absolutely nobody accountable.
Well, I think you can imagine, in a spirit of unity, Dumb Joe is going to get up there, or have the chief of staff or Hen Psaki or somebody get up there and say to bring our divisions, to lessen our divisions, to bring the country together, that he has appointed a commission to study what happened on January 6th, and it will be chaired by the smartest women in the world, Hillary Clinton and Michelle Obama.
No, he's got to get crackheads. Sure. Smartest female black crackheads, so that it's everything is equal.
Yeah, we're not talking here. We're not suggesting that Michelle or Hillary are crackheads.
No.
At least I'm not.
I'm not suggesting that. I have no evidence that they are. I'll say that I don't.
Right. But I think there's abundant evidence that neither of them is particularly intelligent.
I was going to say they're as smart as a crackhead.
To put it mildly.
Yeah.
That could be a new game show.
Right. Are you as smart as a crackhead? Right. We could have Hunter Biden be the host. So what are your feelings about Miami, Charles? So. How do you like what we're? Oh, you can't see, right? I'm sorry that happened. I think it overheated early and cut your portion of the feed, but maybe you can watch on the playback. I think that might be the Delano Hotel, but maybe not.
Nice.
I don't know. Hard for me to say. So sorry, I interrupted you there to talk about the 9/11 style commission.
Right, but in truth, we need that. I mean, the 4 hours and 57 minutes that you and I, well, you put it out, but you and I did together on that day, January 6th, there's a lot of information in there. There's a lot of, if one were to go back and do frame-by-frame analysis and then avail oneself of the power that apparently exists in various federal, state, and city level, in these systems that are called fusion systems that are run by, I think, Microsoft software. I think it should be possible to identify the suspicious-looking people who were dressed either in quasi-military outfits or near military outfits, not really blending in with Trump supporters, and then track their movements. Who organized them? When did they decide to come to Washington, D.C.? Can we figure out who may have paid for their trips? People will find that this was very much a staged incident.
Absolutely.
And any serious investigation would show that.
Well, but instead what they did was they took the footage from John Sullivan and BG on the scene, and they cut it together into their own little January 6th mashup with some fun music and an exciting video. I mean, that was a music video. That was a promotional pitch. That was not an evidence video. I mean, normally you'd say, okay, video one, this was photographed by John Sullivan, and then, that didn't feel like a trial. It was a show. It was literally a show, and I just, oh no, there's the Delano down there. Charles, it's getting hard to imagine what is going to possibly happen next because it just keeps getting more and more ridiculous.
Well, we have the modern equivalent of the Salem witch trials. You
Right.
accuse somebody of being a witch, you put them underwater, you throw them in the water, and if they drown, they're a witch, and if they survive, they're not a witch. That kind of stuff. I mean, that's not what we signed up for
No.
in 1770, what our ancestors signed up for in 1776 and 1789. Just isn't.
And I think the big problem is that it's also not necessarily a one-off because the people doing it are the people who are in charge for at least the next 2 years, if not longer. And I mean, they're certainly showing no signs of letting up. You can't get rid of them.
Well, but what I do think we're going to see here is polling is going to come out, and certainly viewership is coming out on the various channels. With viewership ties into advertising rates and stuff like that. I think you're going to see that this final stage of the Get Trumpy show is not playing well, and you're also going to see that the moves by the so-called inspired Dumb Joe administration are also not playing well. Either they're not left-leaning enough to satisfy the hard left, or they're just flat-out crazy and inflaming the passions. For example, you take the states and portions of this country that are really important, any 2024 Democratic hopes for victory, they have to get Colorado. They have to make sure that Colorado remains blue, and they have to keep New Mexico blue. Well, killing this Keystone Pipeline in the way they did it, the cavalier fashion they did it, is really cheesing off, as they say in England, or pissing off, as they say in the United States, a lot of voters who will remember that they had high-paying jobs that were destined to last for many years, and then they were abruptly cut off in the winter. Just after holiday season bills have to get paid.
Right.
Who knows how much they'd run up for Christmas and stuff like that. The credit card bill comes due, and instead of getting this big salary and overtime that you thought you were going to get for another 36 or 48 months, you're out of work.
Yep.
So, the Biden administration and the people around him are private sector job killers, job crushers.
Right.
And
they're communists. They want this global communist system.
Right. Which has worked not so well everywhere.
Yeah. And I apologize. I am to some extent the driver of the jumping all around because I'm paying attention to so many things, particularly being by myself in a city I don't know that well and running all this equipment. And having all these kind of crazy people come at me all the time. I don't know, some maniac. But the point is, just to get back to Mike Lindell for a second, I get it that people like him, and it's not about criticizing Mike Lindell. The reason why I'm being so hard on the guy is because he is trying to approach the president, who is somebody that I do support and do want to make sure is not deceived by people who come at him as trustworthy. And I remember all the people who approached me ostensibly offering help, who turned out to be liars, trying to basically ruin my life by setting me up for lawsuits that could cost me thousands and even millions of dollars, and all the idiots trying to trap me in default judgments. And I detect that there are a lot of people around President Trump who are doing that as well. And rather than defending Mike Lindell, people should be asking Mike Lindell why he won't listen to evidence that shows that Mary Fanning is lying about the hammer and the scorecard. Sorry, see, you brought this up and I wanted to mention it again. Wow, look at that Range Rover convertible. I didn't even know they had that. But you were talking about Larry Johnson. And when I go through the comments, Charles, I see a lot of people say things like, oh, shame on you and Charles. You trust this CIA guy over Mike Lindell. And, you and Charles have sold out and, all kinds of stupid stuff like that. It's not a matter of trusting a particular person over another person. And I really hope that if people, listen to anything that I say and use it to help themselves form opinions, that they will not rely on trusting particular people because of how they may feel about that person, but rather to rely on the information that person brings. So it's not a matter of, and I'm not attempting to speak for you, Charles, but I do believe that you feel this way. It's not a matter of trusting one person or another. It's a matter of Larry Johnson has presented information that when you look at it, it's irrefutable. It just makes sense. It's, where is their counter argument to his extremely cogent argument? I just don't believe that it's there. And if it is, I would welcome Mike Lindell to come speak with you or I on this show, or anyone else who he's not paying hundreds of thousands of dollars in advertising money to answer some of these questions. Because, we do want to give him the benefit of the doubt that he's trying to do the right thing and perhaps he's being fooled. But at a certain point, when you refuse to look at the evidence, you're acting exactly like these Democrats who want to frame Trump. There's evidence there, but they don't want to look at it. They want to present you with nonsense and crap. And same thing with Lindell. He calls his thing absolute proof, but it's not absolute proof. It's faulty evidence. He might think it's proof, but he's just unwilling to listen to any counter argument.
Well, yeah, on the subject of Larry Johnson, what he has written about in the past, he is intimately familiar with the many serious problems in Dennis Montgomery's background and story, which include gambling problems, bad check writing problems, all kinds of various in the millions.
Yep.
And somebody, the evidence, it's not the first time he's put forward evidence that to a surface level mind, connected to tough scrutiny of the type that Larry Johnson and an independent expert, I might add, whose name I don't know if it's revealed or not in his work, but he definitely had his own views based on his own experience, but then he went to another person to assess the evidence and decisively came back saying that supposed list of thousands of incursions into the election voting process is just totally bogus.
Yeah, it's
a prop.
List.
It looks
right.
good to the uninitiated.
Exactly. Excellent choice of words. It's a prop. It's just a
there's
list.
No chain of custody.
Right. Just a list of numbers, a list of names,
Right.
a list of IP addresses that don't necessarily correlate to any actual action. And I got to tell you something. This is why I'm questioning him so heavily, because you and I have discussed this. It is possible that he was a crackhead and he overcame it and he started a $300 million company. However, in my opinion, the type of person that would have the willpower and fortitude and mental capacity to do that and succeed at that would not be so gullible as to just look at a list like that and say, wow, I'm going to go stake my entire reputation and my company on this on the basis that it looks possibly like it might be evidence. I mean, how could someone that quick to judgment have possibly succeeded in any business endeavor with the competition that's out there and all the challenges in starting a business? I just don't find that plausible at all.
Well, again, one issue here for this suspicious finance mind is when you're talking about a company that might be 100% controlled by the Lindell family, that is to say Lindell and his wider group, that's private. And you talk about somebody who's as visible on TV now before this, and certainly after this, it's plausible to believe that there would be lots of lenders in a low interest rate environment who might be willing to give him more money to keep a sketchy business moving. And so if Lindell has, we know that the big Price Waterhouse and other big accounting firms that have been willing to put their name on Clinton Foundation fraudulent audits, in my view. Just because you have a big accounting name doesn't mean you're necessarily going to be able to stress test Lindell's business. But I'd love to see actual financial statements and supporting data that show that this thing is as successful as he claims. And I can tell you that as far as the charities are concerned, the paperwork's not there where it should be.
Yeah.
So it's not. I hope people don't. In my own case, I hope people don't say, "Well, Charles Ortel says this is correct, so it must be correct." Just because I'm human, I make mistakes. You have to engage your own mind, looking at the evidence.
That's right.
And I love it when people say, "Hey, you said this was the case and it wasn't." That does happen from time to time, and I appreciate the criticism.
Well, and not only that,
the way they're trying to get.
Sorry.
Yeah, well, what I was going to say is what they've been trying to sell us, the people in the swamp, this expert society, that, they're the appointed experts, the people who show up on the shows, people who get books published, people who teach, the experts. We should just listen to them. Don't use your own mind. Don't think for yourself. Just follow the experts. And look the place that has gotten us into.
Exactly.
It's not working very well.
And the thing I was going to add, Charles. Okay, I lost Charles, unfortunately. It's a huge hit on the data to have a call-in guest and enjoy the sights and hear from Charles. We're going to try and experiment with that a bit more Oh wait, maybe Charles is back now. Charles, are you back? I can't hear you at all. It says connecting. Let me see if I walk up this way. Here's Charles Ortel. I'm not hearing you though, so I'm not sure if it's working or what. It says connecting. Connected, maybe it says. Charles, can you hear me? Let's see if we can get Charles. We'll give it one more shot. Charles, are you there? Charles? No. Okay, so that's it. I don't think the video chat's going to work anymore. But it was cool and it was fun to see Miami and to visit Miami with Charles. It's Sunday with Charles. Sunday without Charles would be no good. Maybe he's back. I think he's trying to connect, but it's not working. Charles, if you can hear me, I can't hear you. Maybe the audience can hear you. But I think what we're going to do is to end the broadcast here. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I want to thank Charles for, I know he doesn't like to play in the technology pool, and I had to get him to finagle some stuff with new software and messing around with his phone. But I think it was, for the most part, very, very good show, and a good comment from Charles. And I didn't get killed, so that's always a plus. I hope people will become sponsors on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth or subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth, because it's the only way I can do road trips like this and take everybody around to see Miami. Let's see if we can get Charles back in there. I see it's bringing his window back up, but he's not in there, and I can't hear him, so something seems to be wrong with that. I do want to remind people that they can find Crowdsource the Truth on library.lbry.tv and also on BitChute. Go to BitChute and search for Crowdsource the Truth. People can also go to crowdsourcethetruth.com, and if you'd like to sponsor the Counter Lawfare Fund, just scroll down past today's video. Link sponsorship levels for the Counter Lawfare Fund and become a sponsor and help me fight the social engineers, including the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. The lawsuit is becoming very expensive, and the supplemental lawsuits. Remember, this is the strategy that was announced as how they intended to overwhelm me, multiple lawsuits coming from every direction. So if you want to help Crowdsource the Truth stay going, become a sponsor, sponsor the Counter Lawfare Fund. We're going to keep moving on throughout the country and check out all these different states, other cities in Florida. I'm going to go to Texas, and this is going to be I think a months-long road trip that may involve returning to New York and going on to other places. And it hasn't been thoroughly and exactly planned out, just sort of going all over. People have been giving me some really good suggestions for places to visit, and I'd like to try to fulfill all those, even if it takes a long time. But working on a bunch of different things to make that happen, and I really want to thank the generous sponsors who have stepped up to sponsor Crowdsource the Truth. I couldn't do this road trip without you. I couldn't keep the show going without you. So don't pay attention to the social engineering comments. If you see a comment that sounds unusual to you, take a look at the name of the person who's leaving it. Is it a real name? Is it a fake name? Click on it and go look at their YouTube channel. Are there any videos loaded on there, or is it just a blank channel with a name? One trick that they often use is they'll make playlists.
Now you're back.
Ah, you're back, Charles. Awesome. There we go.
Yeah.
Boy, it's amazing.
I didn't know that you spoke Chinese.
Sorry about that. Yeah, no,
Sounded like you were speaking Chinese back then.
No, I don't speak Chinese, but definitely we were having a bit of a difficult network issue. So, what's happening now, Charles, is the battery is very low. So I think we're going to need to end the broadcast fairly soon anyway. But I'm glad that you came back so that we can just have a last chat. Are you able to see Miami or me or anything, or are you able to see me?
I did for a second, but now I see it. And I think we should, I can see it. I think we should wish everybody a happy Chinese New Year.
Happy Valentine's Day, right? Is it Chinese?
No, and Chinese New Year as well.
Is that real or you're joking?
But happy Valentine's Day in addition.
Is it actually
No,
Chinese
it
New
is,
Year?
it is.
Oh, I didn't know that. Well, certainly happy Chinese New Year.
Yeah,
To
it was.
President Dumb Joe.
You know what it is?
What?
No, it's a special Chinese New Year. It's Year of the Dumb F***CK.
Exactly. Year of the rat. Year of the goat. Year of the dope. Have I still
Right.
got you, Charles? Yeah. Well, all right. Any
Anyway.
closing words, Charles? The battery is about to die here.
Well, just drive carefully, and we'll be in touch soon.
Excellent. Thanks for joining me today, Charles, and thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great night. See everybody tomorrow.